You know, life has a funny way of tricking us. We get so caught up in the chase for success, for approval, that we forget what really matters. I was no different. I'm John Mitchell, a guy who thought that success, money, and status were the keys to happiness. At least, that's what I believed for a long time. I was always the kind of person who believed love was something that needed to come after everything else. You know, after career, after achieving some level of success. I was in my mid-30s, and everything in my life had been moving at full speed. I was building my career, growing my business, and trying to make a name for myself. I had a vision for the future, but I never realized I was leaving something behind. Something, or someone, more important than anything else. Emma and I had been together for a while. She was smart, ambitious, and absolutely beautiful. But somehow, we'd drifted apart. Not because we stopped loving each other, but because I was obsessed with proving something. That I could make it. That I could provide, be the man who had it all. But here's the thing, when you chase after something so hard, you end up losing sight of what you were chasing in the first place. Emma had dreams too, of course. But they weren't just about material success. She wanted something more, something deeper. She wanted a connection, she wanted love, she wanted to feel secure in our future together. And I kept pushing her away, thinking that once I got where I was going, everything would fall into place. But it didn't, and that's where the bubble burst. That's when I made the hardest decision of my life. The decision to break up with her. I told myself it was for the best. That I couldn't drag her into my world of late nights and endless work. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about that. It was about me feeling like I had to prove something to myself. To prove that I could succeed on my own, without being tied down. But what if I was wrong? What if all those years of working, of pushing away the love that could have made it all worthwhile, had been wasted? Breaking up with Emma wasn't easy. In fact, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. She was more than just my girlfriend, she was the person I thought I could build a life with. But at that moment, I couldn't see a way forward for us. Not with where I was in my life, and especially not with the way things had been going. I remember sitting across from her at our favorite cafe, the place we'd first met. She was staring at me, waiting for me to say something. I could feel the weight of her gaze. I could see the hurt in her eyes, but I knew what had to be done. Emma, I said, my voice cracking a bit. I think we need to break up. She blinked, as if she hadn't quite heard me. I repeated it. And it hit her like a punch in the gut. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, trying to process what I had just said. I don't think I fully understood how much this was going to hurt her until I saw the look on her face. The look of someone who thought everything was going fine, only to be blindsided by the truth. But why, John? What happened? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I paused, taking a deep breath. The words felt heavy in my chest. I wanted to tell her everything, to explain how much I loved her and how much this hurt me too. But I couldn't. Not with the way things were. I was so focused on my career, so obsessed with building something for myself, that I didn't have room to give her the attention and love she deserved. I can't keep doing this, I said finally. I need to focus on my career. I need to get myself together before I can be with anyone. Emma sat there for a long time, her lips trembling. She tried to hold back tears, but I could see them welling up in her eyes. I hated myself for causing her pain, but I told myself it was for the best. I was doing it for us, for the future. I thought if I could just succeed, I could come back and we could have everything. But right then, I didn't know that it wasn't going to be that simple. As I left that cafe, something shifted inside me. I had just let go of the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. And all I could think was, had I made the right decision? Was this really what needed to happen? I didn't have an answer. I just had the empty feeling in my chest that wouldn't go away. All I knew was that I had pushed her away, and I didn't know if I'd ever get the chance to make it right. The first few months after the breakup felt like a blur. My mind was consumed with work, trying to keep myself busy, pushing down the guilt and regret that lingered every time I thought of Emma. But no matter how hard I tried, she was always there in my mind. Her face, the way she laughed, the way she made everything feel lighter. I couldn't escape the memory of her, and honestly, I didn't want to. I thought work would fill the emptiness, that the constant grind would erase the pain. And for a while, it worked. I was climbing the ladder, getting closer to the success I had always dreamed of. My career was taking off. I'd secured new clients, I was finally making money, and everything seemed like it was falling into place. But in the quiet moments, when I was alone, it all felt hollow. I kept telling myself that I had made the right decision, that I needed to focus on myself, on building a future. I convinced myself that love would come later, after I'd earned it. But that voice in my head, telling me that I'd lost something irreplaceable, never went away. I remember one night, sitting in my apartment, staring at the city lights from my window. It was a Friday, and I had just come back from a dinner meeting. I should have felt proud of the work I was doing, but all I could think about was Emma. I wondered what she was doing. Was she happy? Had she moved on? I had avoided checking up on her. I didn't want to know if she had found someone else, if she had started a new life without me. But one night, unable to resist, I looked her up on social media. I knew it was a mistake, but I did it anyway, and there she was. She looked different. Happier. She had posted a picture of herself at some charity event, smiling with her friends, surrounded by people who seemed to adore her. And in that moment, I felt a pit in my stomach. Was I too late? I stared at that photo for a long time, feeling a mix of jealousy, regret, and sadness. Here I was, thinking I was doing the right thing, but now it felt like I was the one who had lost. I couldn't stop wondering if she was better off without me. Was she truly happy? Or had she just moved on because I wasn't there? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't keep living like this. I had built this life, this success, but at what cost? I had pushed Emma away, thinking I needed to be better, to do more, before I could be the man she deserved. But in the process, I had forgotten what really mattered. I had forgotten how much I loved her. I had spent so many years focused on building my career, on achieving success, that I never stopped to consider what I was losing along the way. Now, as I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by the fruits of my labor, expensive furniture, a big TV, new gadgets, it all felt meaningless. The apartment looked great, but it felt empty. And so did I. I had told myself that I was doing everything for the right reasons. I had convinced myself that when the time came, I'd be the kind of man Emma could be proud of. I'd be financially stable, successful, able to give her everything she wanted. But now, without her, I couldn't help but feel like a failure. What good was all this if I didn't have the one person I wanted to share it with? I wasn't the man I had imagined I'd become. I had built this image in my head of a successful, confident person, the kind who could face challenges and come out on top. But now, I felt like I was just pretending to be someone I wasn't. The confidence I had once felt was slowly slipping away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of doubt. Was I good enough for anyone? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had let my insecurities take over. I had always believed that love would come when I had my life together, when I had my career in order. But now, I could see that love wasn't something you could just plan. It wasn't something you could control. I had pushed Emma away because I thought I wasn't good enough for her as I was. But in reality, I had always been enough. I had lost sight of what truly mattered. I thought that success, money, and status would fill the void, but they didn't. What I needed wasn't validation from the outside world. What I needed was to believe in myself. To realize that I didn't have to be perfect to deserve love. But now, all I could do was look back and wonder if I had ruined everything. I spent days analyzing everything. The little moments I had taken for granted, the things I could have done differently. I questioned myself, my choices, and my worth. Had I given up on something real because I was too focused on the wrong things? Was I a failure for not being the man I thought I should be? And yet, as the weeks dragged on, something began to shift. Slowly, I started to realize that I wasn't defined by my job or my achievements. I was more than the title on my business card. I was more than the money in my bank account. I was a person who had loved deeply, who had made mistakes, and who could learn from those mistakes. The nights were the hardest. It wasn't the loneliness that hit me the most, it was the memories. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind constantly replaying everything I had lost. The way Emma's laughter filled the room. The way she made me feel like I could conquer the world when we were together. But now, all I had were the echoes of those moments, reminders of what could have been. I tried to push the pain aside, telling myself I'd get over it, that time would heal all wounds. But deep down, I knew I couldn't just move on that easily. This wasn't something I could forget. Emma wasn't just my girlfriend, she had been my best friend, my confidant, my partner. Losing her felt like I had lost a part of myself. I kept telling myself that I had made the right decision, that breaking up with her was the only choice. After all, I had my future to think about. I needed to focus on my career, my success. But every time I convinced myself that I was doing what was best for both of us, I felt like I was lying. I was lying to myself, pretending that the pain didn't matter, that the emptiness inside me wasn't real. I would wake up some mornings, hoping that everything was a bad dream. I would reach for my phone, half expecting a message from Emma, telling me that she missed me, that everything was going to be okay. But there was nothing. Just silence. The silence of someone who had moved on. The silence of someone who had finally let go. And in that silence, I felt a crushing weight. It wasn't just the loss of love, it was the loss of the future I had envisioned with her. The trips we would have taken, the family we might have started. The dreams I had built with her in mind. I realized that the person I had pushed away was the person I needed most. I tried distracting myself. I threw myself into work, into social events, into anything that could take my mind off Emma. But nothing worked. Nothing could fill the void she had left. I could hear her voice in my head, feel her presence in every corner of my apartment. It was as if she was still there, haunting me, reminding me of everything I had given up. The more I tried to move on, the more I felt stuck. I felt like I was drowning in my own emotions, unable to escape the guilt, the regret, the heartbreak. It felt like I was losing myself, like I couldn't breathe without her. I had spent so much time convincing myself that I had made the right choice, but now I was questioning everything. Had I done the right thing? The truth was, I was terrified. Terrified that I had ruined my chance at true happiness. Terrified that I would never find someone like Emma again. And even more terrifying was the thought that maybe she was better off without me, that she had moved on while I was stuck here, caught in a whirlwind of my own making. It wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I finally faced the truth. The pain, the guilt, the constant questioning, they had all led me here. And the worst part was, I didn't know which way to go. I didn't know if I should keep fighting to fix things with Emma, or if I should finally accept that maybe it was time to let go. I had spent weeks torturing myself over the what-ifs. What if I had been more patient? What if I had worked harder on my communication? What if I hadn't let my career overshadow everything else? I could feel my heart breaking all over again as I imagined a future without her. A future where I never got to hold her hand again, never got to hear her voice. But there was another part of me that knew the relationship had to end. It wasn't just about the breakup. It was about recognizing that I couldn't keep living in the past. Emma had always been the love of my life, but I had to accept that sometimes love alone isn't enough to make a relationship work. I had ignored her needs for so long. I had neglected the things that truly mattered to her. Maybe I didn't deserve a second chance with her, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to start focusing on myself. I couldn't keep holding on to a relationship that had already slipped through my fingers. For days, I sat with this internal battle, torn between my love for her and my fear of being alone. The thought of seeing her move on with someone else was like a knife to my chest, but deep down, I knew that if I didn't let go, I would never be able to move forward. I had to let go of the past and face the future, no matter how uncertain it seemed. It wasn't an easy decision. In fact, it was the hardest one I had ever made. I knew that if I let her go, I might never get another chance. But I also knew that if I held on, I would never be able to grow. I would never be able to heal, to learn from my mistakes, and to become the person I truly wanted to be. As much as it hurt, I knew that my path forward wasn't with Emma. It wasn't the easy choice, and it wasn't the choice I wanted, but it was the choice I needed. I had to walk away to learn how to love myself again. I had to learn how to live my life without relying on someone else to make me feel whole. With a heavy heart, I finally made the decision to let her go. The weight that lifted from my chest was both freeing and painful. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't keep living in the past. I had to face the present and let it guide me towards something new. The hardest part about letting go wasn't just saying goodbye to Emma, it was the loneliness that followed. For the first time in a long time, I found myself completely alone with my thoughts, my guilt, and my fears. I had always been the strong one, the one people came to for advice or support. But now, I realized I was the one who needed help. I didn't want to burden anyone with my pain, but at some point, I had to admit that I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I called my brother Dan, hoping that maybe he could give me some perspective. He had always been the kind of guy who seemed to have everything figured out, and I needed that, someone who could tell me that everything would be okay. When we met up, I didn't know where to start. My words felt jumbled, like I was speaking a language I didn't fully understand. But Dan just listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't judge. He just let me talk, let me pour out everything I had been keeping inside for so long. And when I finally stopped, he said something that struck me deeply. "You're not alone in this, John. It's okay to feel broken. It's okay to not have all the answers right now." For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone truly saw me, not as the guy who had it all together, but as a man who was struggling, who was human. I hadn't allowed myself to feel vulnerable in so long. But here I was, admitting that I was struggling, and it felt like a small weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Later that evening, I met up with some close friends. We hadn't all gotten together in a while, and I wasn't sure how I was going to explain everything, but I knew I needed to. I had spent so much time pretending that everything was fine, but now, with my friends, I could let go of that facade. It wasn't easy to admit that I had messed up, that I had hurt the person I loved. But when I did, their reactions were nothing like what I had expected. They didn't criticize me or tell me I should have done things differently. Instead, they offered their support, their understanding. They reminded me that no one was perfect, and that sometimes, life just didn't go as planned. It was humbling, to say the least. For so long, I had been the one who gave advice, who was the rock for everyone else. But in that moment, I realized that I couldn't always be the strong one. Sometimes, it's okay to lean on others. Sometimes, it's okay to let them carry you, even if it's just for a little while. That night, I went home feeling lighter. The weight of the world didn't magically disappear. But I wasn't carrying it by myself anymore. I had people in my life who cared about me, who were there to help me through this. I had people who reminded me that I wasn't defined by my mistakes, that I still had the ability to rebuild, to move forward, and to grow. As the weeks passed, I started to realize something important. Healing didn't happen overnight. It wasn't something that could be forced, or rushed, or magically fixed by a single moment of clarity. It was a process, and I had to take it one step at a time. At first, I felt like I was just going through the motions. I forced myself to get out of bed, go to work, interact with people, even when I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. But I slowly started noticing small changes. I would wake up without the constant ache in my chest. I'd find myself laughing at something silly on TV. I'd catch myself looking in the mirror, seeing a version of myself that wasn't entirely broken. One morning, I decided to take up running. I had never been much of an athlete, but something about the idea of putting my energy into something physical appealed to me. The first few days were tough. My body wasn't used to it, and my mind kept wandering back to Emma, to the emptiness I still felt. But I kept pushing through. Every step, every mile, felt like a tiny victory. I was doing something for myself, something that wasn't tied to the past or to anyone else. As I ran, I began to feel more in control of my life. I wasn't just letting the days pass by. I was taking charge of my own healing. Running became my time to think, to reflect, to clear my mind. And little by little, the emptiness started to fade. It wasn't gone completely, but I could feel the pieces of myself that had been scattered slowly coming back together. At the same time, I focused on my work. I threw myself into my career with a new sense of purpose. I realized that my professional life was something I could control, and that success in that area could be a stepping stone to building back my confidence and self-worth. I didn't need Emma to define who I was. I didn't need anyone to define who I was. I had to figure that out for myself. I started setting small goals, simple things that would help me build my confidence. I enrolled in a personal development course, started reading books that inspired me, and worked on finding a balance between work, health, and social life. It wasn't easy, but each day I felt a little stronger, a little more like myself. And with each small victory, I felt more capable of handling whatever the future threw my way. There were days when I still felt like I was failing, days when I doubted whether I'd ever truly heal. But I reminded myself that growth wasn't linear. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about making progress, no matter how slow it seemed. I had to be patient with myself, just as I would have been with someone else going through the same journey. In the end, I realized that healing wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about learning from it and moving forward. It was about becoming stronger, more resilient, and more self-aware. And though I wasn't completely healed, I was on the right path. I was finally learning how to love myself again. I had spent so much time trying to heal and rebuild my life after the breakup that I didn't even realize how much I had closed myself off from new experiences, especially when it came to relationships. The idea of letting someone in again felt like a betrayal of my past with Emma. Yet, deep down, I knew I couldn't live the rest of my life locked away in that small, dark corner of my heart where all the hurt lived. It was a typical Thursday evening when it happened. I had been invited to a friend's birthday party, something casual, nothing fancy. At first, I didn't even want to go. The idea of being around a group of strangers made me uncomfortable, but something told me I needed to take the chance. So, I put on my best I've got this face, and walked into the room. That's when I met Laura. She wasn't anything like Emma, she was different in all the right ways. Where Emma had been reserved, Laura was warm and open. Where Emma had been quiet, Laura had a way of drawing people in with her laughter and easy smile. At first, I wasn't sure if I should even get involved. I wasn't looking for anyone. But something about her caught my attention. There was a kindness in her eyes, a genuine interest in others that made me want to know more. We started talking, and before long, I found myself laughing and enjoying her company like I hadn't done in months. We had an easy rapport, and I found myself thinking, maybe I can do this again. Maybe I can open up to someone new. But even as the conversation flowed effortlessly, I couldn't ignore the voice in my head. Are you ready for this? Can you trust her? It wasn't the voice of doubt, it was the voice of caution, reminding me that trust needed to be earned, not given away freely. I had learned that the hard way. The next few weeks were a mix of excitement and hesitation. Laura and I spent more time together, casual dates, long walks, quiet conversations, and I found myself drawn to her in a way I hadn't expected. But I wasn't rushing into anything. I knew I needed to rebuild trust, not just with her, but with myself. I had to trust that I could let someone in without losing myself again, without repeating the mistakes of the past. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset, Laura asked me a question that struck me to my core. Do you think you'll ever be able to trust someone again? I know what you've been through, and I just want to know if there's still space for me in your heart. I was honest with her. I told her that, yes, I was still healing. That it wasn't easy for me to open up, to let someone in. But I also told her that I wanted to try. Not just for her, but for me, for the man I was becoming, the man who had learned to heal and rebuild, and who was finally ready to trust again. And in that moment, something shifted. I realized that opening up to someone new wasn't a betrayal of Emma. It was an act of courage. It was proof that I was stronger, that I had grown, and that I was ready to embrace the future, even if it meant taking risks. And in the process, I learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means making space for new love to grow. Even when it feels uncertain.